Financial management at public institutions has continually been a source of debate at different quarters, with many calling for better transparency and accountability. For a long time, the embezzlement of funds in the public offices, with many of them never retrieved, has given many misguided notions that public offices are for enrichment of public office holders. However, the coming of the present administration has proven to have brought sanity to public offices through the various measures put in place to fight corruption. The federal government in Nigeria some time ago began the public finance management reforms to address the challenges of transparency, accountability, corruption, and poor service delivery. With the introduction of Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, IPPIS, the Government Integrated Financial Management Information System, Treasury Single Accounts, e-payment, and International Public Sector Accounting Standards, many are of the view that though the implementation of these reforms is beginning to yield results, there is still need for the political will, commitment, capacity enhancement, and funding for the country to reap the full benefits of these reforms.
Welfare to the staff. It can also prevent from the corruption.
Individual discipline. If we discipline ourselves individually, that's the first way we can solve corruption.
Some legislations have also been enacted in the areas of fiscal responsibility and public procurements. Now, how far has the federal government strive in ensuring transparency and accountability in the public finance management been? How can the fight against corruption be sustained? Guests on NTS Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers to these questions and more shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. Here with us in the studios, I would like to welcome our three guests. First, Accountant General of the Federation, Alhaji Ahmed Idris. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also here, Professor Ken Ife, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, is an economic analyst.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you around. And Christy Adejo is also here with us. He's an entrepreneur, public affairs analyst, and business etiquette trainer. Pleasure to have you around on Good Morning Nigeria. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. And we're going to begin this conversation by bringing in Ahmed Idris, who is the Accountant General of the Federation.
Thank you.
Well, a short while ago, actually, before we commenced the program, I was, discussed with my colleague Kinsley, on one major characteristics of accountants. There's no money anytime, any day. Even when you're happy to billions. Well, that's by the way.
That's why they call them bean counters. Sometimes they're a bit pejorative, but that's not on that. Yes.
All right, sir. What is the financial transparency policy all about?
The financial transparency policy is a policy launched by the, rolled out by the federal government and launched by Mr. President himself on 9th of December last year. And essentially, the policy is aims at giving a latitude, a space for Nigerians to know exactly what is happening in the public finance management of this country, and to begin to see where resources of government, where their own resources, because they are public resources, are being deployed for development, in social aspects of this country, in all aspects of this country. And for this reason, the policy, creates a portal. Under the policy, there is a portal which is domiciled in the Office of Accountant General of the Federation. And that portal, known as Open Treasury Portal. Open Treasury Portal. It is web-based, it is active and highly interactive, and it contains public financial information about inflows and outflows in the Treasury. And the portal is being populated from 2018 upwards. We are still populating the portal in terms of data. And, Nigerians and indeed all interested parties could now simply at click of button go to the portal and access information by MDA, by sector. When I say by sector, is it education sector? Is it rail development in terms of road construction? Is it by ministry? And so on and so forth. And one can visibly see all this information, and it also confirms government's desire to comply with the open government partnership, which government has subscribed to. And all these are meant to achieve a lot of things, and in due course, as we discuss, we will tell you more about the portal.
Well, let's walk back a bit and therefore ask the question, are there issues with public finance management in Nigeria? And if so, what are those issues that would warrant the launch of this policy?
No, generally, people want to know exactly what their resources are used for. And there is growing need and demand by different parties, NGOs, and ordinary Nigerians as to where do resources go. And there is also this need to emphasize on fight against corruption. And there is need for openness. There is need for transparency. There is need for probity. So all these put together, and the fact that government has subscribed to the Open Government Partnership, and we also equally want to be in tandem with other internationally accepted standards. So Nigeria has no option but to roll out a policy like this, and we are glad it is happening now.
Okay, let's bring in Professor Kenny here. Let me take it from the last question that put out to the AG by Kinsley, when he mentioned whether we had issues of public finance management in the country, historically speaking. But if you ask me, decades ago, we have never brought the issue of transparency to the front burner, by government. Now, how do you now see the current federal government initiative with this issue of, creating space, or as he called it, latitude, to ensure that Nigerians get to know how resources are expended?
Well, we know that we have legacy issues when it comes to transparency. And but what we haven't seen is the concrete step that has been taken, as described by the Accountant General, in the whole value chain of public finance management. What we have is, end to end. What we have is constitutional, legislative, policy, and regulatory frameworks. But all these have been existing on paper, and then we have institutions that are meant to deliver this. But what we haven't seen, which we have seen now, is government saying, don't take my word for it. I transfer to you, the citizens, the power to interrogate the finance. We've never seen this. This is operationalizing and actually delivering it to the people. NGOs, members of the public, nationals, go and have a look. And then it is a minefield, and it is a force for good. So we'll have to unpack what that means.
Well, I say, let me restate my question and bring in Christy Adejo, because there must be a basis for saying, all right, we are opening the doors, we are opening our books for all to see. What do we know about pre-existing practices? Old habits, they say, die hard.
Exactly. Hitherto, just like he was talking about legacies, we've never really had a legacy of openness in governance. Again, talking as a student of politics, we would say maybe it's a hangover from the military regime. But over the years, there's almost been a steady obfuscation, let's put it that way, of issues that concern public finance from the public. So that certain things you can't access. Of course, in the typical Nigerian way, we also should blame the followership, not just the leadership. A lot of Nigerians are not keen on knowing the nitty-gritty about public finance until lately. And I wouldn't take this from this government. I think under the present administration, there have been some light, some sunlight, I would say, elements of excellence. We've seen the IPPIS, we've seen the TSA. Of course, that's quite glorious. It gives us hope that there is more. And of course, lately, the Open Government portal. But I'd like to say that we've always had a non-commitment to implementing these various policies. They're in good stead, but how is the adherence to completing them? Let me give you a basic example. The Public Procurement Act. To have full compliance or full performance of that act, we need to have the Procurement Council. That's not been set up. So that detracts from the full implementation of that act. And without seeming to detract from whatever successes this administration has got. Even the president himself did say yesterday when he was in his message to the annual general meeting of the auditors, he did indict them that they hadn't done well enough. And there's still room to audit public finances, public officers in the discharge of their work. So there's room for us to improve in spite of the many successes recorded so far.
Kirian, I was just wondering, I mean, excuse me, based on what has just been, and the points that have just been highlighted, I want to come back to the Accountant General of the Federation. To whom are public accountants accountable?
Well, public accountants, when you say public accountants, my understanding is those accountants in ministries, departments, and agencies. Essentially, there is a pool of accountants, and that is under the Office of Accountant General of the Federation. But when you deploy or when you post an accountant to an MDA or ministry or agency, he is responsible to the accounting officer of that agency or institution. Yes, there is a pool. There are certain reports which they must make back to the Treasury on monthly basis or quarterly basis, as the case may be. And there are certain meetings they must attend also, which are quarterly, to harness and put our heads together and see the progress being made, assess issues and problems, and then map out strategies to overcome those issues. But when it comes to operations, real nitty-gritties of the accounting and financial work in the ministry, he is answerable to the accounting officer, the permanent secretary, the DGs, the heads of agencies. So as far as the portal is concerned, there are clear responsibilities. We have designed some guidelines, and which are essentially for public use. They are available in our office, and we will get them distributed. It set out clear responsibility of the Office of Accountant General of the Federation, being the Treasury. What form of reports are we expected to publish on the portal on daily basis, on weekly basis, on quarterly basis, on what threshold? And then at the ministry level, there are also reports which the ministry or agency or institution of government is expected to rendish, to give on the portal. And in that case, as far as the ministry is concerned, the accounting officer is solely responsible. No excuse about it. The guidelines are very clear. The instructions and directive of Mr. President on the day of the launch was clear. So we can see clearly that there is no ambiguity in terms of responsibility, in terms of reporting, in terms of frequency of those reports. So all these are clear, and we have guidelines. And there is a desk in our office at the Treasury to guide members of the public who may even attempt to go into the portal and find some difficulty. We will assist. The portal, if you allow me, is www.opentreasury.gov.ng. www.opentreasury.gov.ng. Even on your handset, on Google and so on, it will just come up. And it is friendly. When I say friendly, user-friendly, you can see what reports you want, and you can click and get that report. And we are there to assist institutions and organizations and individuals on the use of the portal.
Yeah, you see, this is a new, should I say, is a new government policy, designed to achieve so many objectives. One of which is actually to see the commitment of the government when it comes to the Freedom of Information Act of 2014, which has been there. Nobody can tell if it's been put into use since it was enacted in 2014. Now, the government 2011 rather. Now, if the present government is desirable of ensuring that freedom of information being injected in this financial transparency initiative of the government, how, in your opinion, will it help to provide the necessary information required? You've talked about your portal, and of course what gets into the portal is what people are going to see. Yeah. And what also is the possibility of ensuring compliance with all the thresholds we've put in place in that document.
Let me give some background. Prior to the launch of the portal, we were inundated with series of demands from different organizations, individuals, non-governmental organizations, for information, financial information. In fact, this is one of the greatest area of need. Give us information about how this happened. It revolves around money, finances, spending, expenditure. And we do answer. And most of the hue and cry about non-compliance with freedom of information revolve around use of resources, finances. And I'm telling you, for the first time within this a month or 2 months, we have noticed that that level of demand has gone down. The mere fact that we announced that there is a portal where everybody can go and access information freely. And that is going in line with really the need to really comply with some of these sub-legislations. The freedom of information is so essential, and that we need to provide basis. And this has given a very strong basis for answering questions, for answering needs and demands of those who are interested in public expenditure and spendings.
Okay, thank you very much, Accountant General of the Federation. Professor Ken, if the Accountant General has, as it were, given the linkage between the operationalization of the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Treasury Portal. But in your opinion, what are the other utilitarian values arising from this Open Treasury Portal?
Well, you can now imagine the manpower that is tied to receiving and handling, and it's not going to be easy for the office, because I would think about 50 to 100 people are going to be wading through documents to provide answer to a request under the Freedom of Information Act, and then they are late in returning it, and then there are legal issues of compliance, and so it's tying down a lot of manpower. And secondly, is actually saying to you that this is taking the policy, having the system, because I would imagine there's a very robust relational database that system is sitting on, for it to be able to give you sectoral view, to give you thematic view, give you all sorts of views on when you are searching for information. And I think is highly commendable that we have come to this stage, as it is just transferring power from civil servants who are going to provide, they're transferring the power to the citizens. Now, imagine, and there's no limit. It means that all these constituency projects are under scrutiny. Because any payment over 5 million, and you are sitting in your village and somebody has collected money for saying he's going to do this hospital or do this, you don't need freedom of information. You just go straight. You get your NGO, you write letter to the assembly, or you have even development funded financing from, let's say, development banks. All these projects that we have put in, external funded projects. You see all of those. So, I don't have enough words to describe the impact, the pervasive impact this is going to have on the question of public, on the case of transparency in public accounting. It is going to radically change everything. And that's the same thing that the finance bill is doing as well. That they are going to radically change the landscape.
Okay, let's come to Madam once more. One of the objectives, of the financial transparency policy is actually to supplement the recently launched whistleblower policy, and of course equip the public with the tools to report financial wrongdoing. In your view, can this policy have the potential of providing financial information that will truly represent the financial expenses of ministries and parastatals as it is?
Yeah, I think without hesitation, I would say yes. Ideally, that's what it's meant to do. And I would like to trust the sincerity of the government in all these initiatives. We must understand that we're on a democratic system now. And part of the nuances so far have been that, like I said earlier in my opening remarks, things have been kept from the public view. Now, having owned up to it somewhat and having put these initiatives in place, one can only hope that, yes, it will help a great deal in opening up that part of government, financial management, how our resources are put and to what use, and also not just on a cash basis as we would normally say, but what is the effect of these particular services or infrastructure to which our money is put over the years? It's not just about, so amount was budgeted for these, it was applied. Is that project of social significance to us? Is it going to help in the long run? Is it something that we would abandon after a while? All these questions, I believe, will be addressed by these initiatives. So I believe I have great hope that it will help the citizenry monitor and evaluate what government is using its money for.
Prof, you want to come in here?
Yeah, if you look at our current method of investigating or starting investigation, if you wanted to involve the EFCC or ICP, somebody has to write a petition. And then in your petition, you may not even have the facts. But here, they will see the facts on the portal. You don't even need to write any petition. The facts are going to be there in the portal. And that is evidence. And you know what happens, why many cases never make it? It's because of evidence. So you have evidence. But the other thing that I would like to see fully developed are the technical support that the Accountant General mentioned. Because people are going to have difficulties in accessing this and interpreting that, so there will be technical support, hotline, web-based support, typical questions and answers, so that people can actually go and see typical questions and typical answers. And that reduces the traffic it's going to generate. And then, of course, naming and shaming has to come in, because that's where you begin to distill this and then name and shame and do some ranking of some MDAs on basis of performance. So that is also going to bring more pressure on them. Before the Accountant General response to the issues you have just raised, when you say utilizing the information from the portal, are you imagining, for instance, that it would also be the responsibility of the AG's office to name and shame, or to reward those who have done that? Or that could be the responsibility of an NGO. There are other institutions that could extract information from there and use it. For example, how many complaints, or how many prosecutions, or how many things that arose from a particular MDA. So there are other institutions that will pick this up and analyze and then begin to bring pressure on the particular MDA that is found wanting?
All right.
It is very clear on the guidelines that have been issued that users of the portal who find some difficulty using the portal, extracting information, getting data, can make specific requests to the MDA concerned or to our office that they have difficulty in getting this information. They should be assisted. And so this is very clear. You see, the development of this portal and policy should be commended. To the best of my knowledge, to the best of the information available to me, I have done some little research personally. No country in Africa has this type of policy in place. And in the whole world, I'm only aware of UK and United States of America. So we are serving as role model, at least within the African continent. And Nigeria should be commended. It is unprecedented, where government itself will say, look, have it all. And that is one very strong critical ingredient for transparency and good governance. And we are lucky it is happening now. And we can see the commitment and sincerity of Mr. President. He came personally and launched the portal.
Now, what is the guarantee that the accountants in the MDAs or the ministries are going to comply, meaningfully, of course, to ensure that the result of what the deliverables we're expecting from this portal or this policy, will go well? Because if it's a garbage in, garbage out, the information given to the portal is what Nigerians are going to take, right? So what about where the information is being generated from? Is it the right information? Is it correct? Is there any means by which you are going to do a kind of a back checking to know whether, look, if this information is in this portal, it is true and it is final, and that's of course exactly what it should be. Is there any means of doing such things? Because of course this thing is not yet in practice, so to speak.
Well, it is in practice to the extent that you can now go into the portal, like I said.
But how many MDAs are complying at the moment?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, almost all. But that is not to say there are no teething issues. There are obvious teething issues for anything, any new policy that has come, afresh. We are trying to address some of these teething issues. I've told you of our ability to upload, to populate the portal with the data, and that has been done. So to the extent that has been done, yes, there are some limitations now on what you can get from the portal until and unless all the data, all the populated, kind of thing is done. That is when you... So, but I'm also quick to tell you that there are clear line of responsibility from the accountant, from my humble self, the Accountant General of the Federation. That is what is expected of me, and down the ladder. And likewise from the Permanent Secretary, the Accounting Officer, there are clear responsibilities. And I don't think there is any accountant that will renege on this directive and on this policy. Remember, whatever we put together on weekly basis, on monthly basis, on quarterly basis, will eventually translate into the audited financial statement of government, which is the climax of it. At the end of the year, 3 months into the succeeding year, we're expected to produce general purpose financial statements, which must be audited by Auditor General for the Federation. So it cannot be garbage in, garbage out. It must be factual data, factual information, and Nigerians are there to see and assess some of these things and to critique it.
I was actually going to ask the point that you just raised now. In projecting or evaluating the utility of the information that one gets from the portal.
Yeah.
Yes, government can display its information via the MDAs to say this is what we got, this is what we have paid out, and so on and so forth. And yet, there's the auditor's report. You have the internal audit, you have the external audit, plus the audit report. I mean, the auditor's conference is on. Information at face value may not be real, depending on the final evaluation provided by the Auditor General. Will it therefore, in terms of trying to utilize this information, what are the cautions that can be issued to say, all right, maybe should there be a caveat, say, await the auditor's report on this and that and that? Or should an inquisitive demand be ultimately based on the Auditor General's report?
No, whatever data is given, if it is a report, if it is a financial statement, there will be a clear indication as to whether it is audited or unaudited. And this is good enough to guide the user. Yes, it is the raw data or raw information before audit is conducted, and you know that you are using a raw data. And then when the audit, which is another process entirely, is done, then you have the audited information, audited data. And I think we should leave it as such. Yes, there must be audit. Before audit, what you have is raw data, and you just cannot call it anything but raw data. I must also tell you that we have developed possible questions and answers by way of booklets. As we roll policies, the tradition in Office of Accountant General of the Federation is we develop guidelines, which I've shown you. We also give some additional insight into possible questions. We ask ourselves, we situate ourselves as a user and ask questions and attempt to answer, putting heads together. This policy is meant to achieve a lot of things: to curb corruption, to ensure openness, and I believe it will build trust in government or in governance, because it's happening for the first time. It hasn't happened before. We've heard of the legacy issues in public finance management of this country, and all these are being addressed step by step. TSA was one of the public finance reform initiatives that we've had. It is now a full story of success. The IPPIS, even though, of course, with the current issues with the universities, I must tell you that out of the 43 federal universities, with a total nominal roll of about 139,000, we have been able to capture over 71%, remaining just about 29%. And this is, it's significant, but then the door for enrollment is still open, and we get professors and members of ASU coming to our office to get enrolled. And that is, we are not stopping the enrollment. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that we have left the university sites. We are now in our office. Whoever wishes to be enrolled can come in. We have had IFSA's implementation. So Office of Accountant General of the Federation has been driving quite a number of public finance reform initiatives. And we are succeeding. We will also succeed in the IPPS implementation.
You're talking about IPPIS. When you say they are coming to your office, is it in Abuja or they can go to the state?
Abuja.
Not in the state offices?
No. In Abuja. It is now in Abuja. We left Abuja to go to their universities for 2 weeks in the first instance. We extended it by another 1 week. We extended further. Now we are back because we must come back and put this captured stuff onto the payroll.
All right, thank you, AG. That's a topic for another day, that we can also deliberate on. But Ken, let me come back to you, Prof. This policy is actually closely tied to the fight against corruption in the first instance. And of course, to encourage and of course enforce availability of financial information to other civil society organizations and private individuals, as the case may be. And the Accountant General raised the issue of teething issues here. Can we go to that? What are those teething issues? Because yes, this policy began in December. This is just January, and we are still putting it to test to see how it's going to work. Of course, the agency says, look, it's going to be successful as other policies did. We hope that. But then there are teething issues. What are those issues?
Well, first of all, you are implementing a system. There are always issues about a new system implementation because there may be bugs that you have to deal with. There may be There are lots of little issues that are, even the programming, you don't know. Many of these issues will arise from time to time. And then you see, and the technicians will be there to sort them out. Then you have, and that's also why from the user perspective, you needed to have a strong technical support team. Because the users themselves are going to be experiencing problems. This is very new. So there's a team there that will be dealing with their problems and also looking back on the system to see how they can correct the problem that they're having. There may also be problems from the people who are keying in the data and mismatches and those misdescription and mismatches, but those also would have to be streamlined over time. And I'm glad that the Accountant General pointed out the issue that it is an audited report. But when the audited reports come in, then they will be updated. So if there are discrepancies or misdescriptions or issues around those, we are warned that those are fresh. And you can have it both ways, actually. Giving us the raw data is more important than even the audited report, because those who are going to use them to do their prosecution and whatever else has to happen, they have actually seen the raw report. Let me give you one example, difference between the two. We have Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 that provides for 122 MDAs, revenue generating MDAs, to return 80% of the operating surplus on a monthly basis. And then they will reconcile at the end of the accounting year. But that's not happening in practice as much. Some are complying, but some are not. So what do you find happening for some of the defaulting agencies? They produce two reports. One to fulfill all righteousness and send it to the Auditor General. And they do a second report and give to the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. And those two reports don't talk to each other because they're holding back the money and spending. And then by the time it comes to the year end, it's just about creative accounting. Whereas if they are making their returns on a monthly basis, putting back 80% on it, then it will be a different story. So that you now have two different scenarios. So that's the kind of thing you will see. But we have to give this time. What we have seen is faith and confidence coming from the willingness of the political will to throw this out. I mean, it's like you divulging your bank account and say to everybody in the press, go and check it.
Yeah, Prof, we'll come to that. Just before we bring in Christy Adejogi, I want to go back to the Accountant General of the Federation. While we are, as guests, you are extolling the virtue of the Open Treasury portal. We're actually talking about the federal government, which has access to just about 50% of the country's resources or revenue. What do we know about the states and local governments in this regard?
Well, constitutionally, federal, states, and local governments are two separate legal constitutional entities, and they're autonomous. Federal policies do not affect states. When I say do not, we cannot impose policies of federal government on state government. However, we work with them, we collaborate and partner to show them the good side of some of these policies. For instance, the TSA, almost all states are now keying in. They are now adopting TSA. It is not an imposition. They saw the importance and the value, and so they key into it and adopted it. The only policy that even that one, no imposition, is the implementation of IFSA's, International Public Sector Accounting Standards. And these are because the states themselves, one way or the other, have some relationship with international organizations who may not look at their financials or listen to them if they are not in tandem with the international standards. So that one, we also collaborate and work at FAC, and there is Common Implementation Committee, and we are working seamlessly together. We give capacity for those states that are desirous of receiving such capacity. We work together and no issues. So I pray and hope that with this policy now in place, state will also begin the process of keying in. They will see the value. More so, the citizens of such states can begin to make demands that, look, federal is doing it. You too should do it. Eventually, all will do it because it is for good. It is for transparency, probity, accountability, and openness. And that is all you need for good governance. That is the basic ingredient of good governance. Once you open everything, it's like saying, come and participate. Come, you are part of it.
Christy Adejo, what would you like to see at the state level? Because there's this phenomenon or the syndrome that is referred to as the emperor's syndrome, where virtually, according to the allegation, state resources are managed as personal estates.
Yes, in fact, when he was talking about the Honorable Accountant General was saying they cannot force the states. In my mind, I was saying, oh, I wish there was a way we could force the states, because really, they're the ones who are closer to the people. The general citizenry would relate more with them, more with the local government councils, and if this initiative does not permeate down there, then it would be almost like paying lip service to it. I'd like to see all the governors buy into this. I'd like to see all the local government chairmen or caretaker committee chairmen buy into this. That's the only way we can beat our chests in the Committee of Nations to say we have openness in our national financial management system. That's the only way we can say whatever, for instance, a body like Transparency International would say, we have reasons to believe that, oh, those reports are not correct. Right now, I also have a concern with the training, the capacity of the officers, just like Prof mentioned. The officers who have to key in these inputs, what's their capacity pre-launch? And even now, what's the general enlightenment, quote-unquote, system that we have put in place to also to train Nigerians, the ordinary Nigerian? We're just talking about technology, but also it's not just technology. There are also some infrastructural impediments that that will not let us make a full use of this portal. So for me, a lot of these can be addressed at the sub-regional or sub-national level, at the states, at the local councils. And so we'd like to see a bit more commitment to synergy in making sure that these really permeates to the little man in my village, for instance, or in my state capital even, which is not too far from Abuja. So that's what I'd like to see.
In fact, from next week, we'll begin full sensitization and awareness of creation about the portal. We'll go to the zonal offices, zonal zones, and our staff will go and we'll do a lot to let Nigerians that the portal is existing, it is robust, it is interactive, it is live, web-based. From your village, provided there is internet, you can access the portal and ask for questions and so on. And we'll be doing that from next week.
All right, I was going to ask you one question now, but let me rest it for now and return to Prof. Prof, you want to?
Yeah, the Accountant General is just being modest in saying that the states are independent. Of course, they are independent constitutionally. But there are lots of things the federal government can do to get them in line. And it's very important for this country that we find ways and means of drawing them into the net. First of all, the federal government has paid for this system. And if you are can obtain a license that allows 36 states to use the same system. And the federal government can bankroll that so that the states are not going to say, we don't have the money. Then secondly, you can actually make presentations to governors on the efficacy of this system and begin to train your colleagues, the accountant generals of other states, to begin to see the value. But then there are also areas where you can start tightening the pressures. One is when you give them money from federal government, direct disbursement to them to do projects, you can demand as a condition that you would actually like this to be published, because we're already publishing them. So that's the demand. If they're going to access this money, they have to fall in line. But there's another one that you've been using, The Fiscal Responsibility Act was first done for the federal government and recommended to the states. So some came on board, some didn't. But then when they now want to borrow money, external borrowing, or they want to go to bonds, then the federal government puts the condition. No, you got to have to, one of the conditions is have you implemented that? Have you set up the Fiscal Responsibility Commission in the state? Now let's do debt sustainability. All of those are pressure devices, and if you want to do it, you will do it.
Yeah, pressure devices, that's interesting. Accountant General, see, what is the role of auditors in this? I want to ask this question because I know that every MDA or ministry, they all have auditors, right? And when you're uploading data, perhaps from the office of whatever accountant in the MDA or wherever, who of course will tell us the money that the accounting office has actually disbursed for a particular purpose. Is there going to be a central auditing system, whereby by the time those auditors, upload the data and information, they will not be re-audited centrally by the Office of Auditor General, of the country? Is there such a measure in place?
Audit function is separate from finance and accounts function, and they should be so statutorily. The Office of Auditor General for the Federation has a responsibility of oversight over all MDAs of the federal government. And they work virtually, real time. When I say real time, they are stationed in each MDA. It's not by visitation. It's just in few cases where they don't have staff, they visit and so on. So the real other audit, which is pre-audit, those auditors are from our office, the internal auditors. And they also work real time. When I say real time, they are stationed, they are there, and they see the records, the vouchers, get them audited before payment is made. So the auditor ordinarily is the first person that can see the document, the vouchers, the records, before even getting them onto the portal. Yes, the portal will assist them. Is what we audited, what is offloaded onto the portal, and so on and so forth. So it's a complementary kind of role.
Is there any monitoring mechanism on the part of the auditors to ensure that what is finally put in the portal is the correct amount?
Now that a policy is rolled out, known as financial transparency policy, it has now added, on the checklist of the auditor, what is expected of an MDA, what is expected of an accountant, what is expected of Office of Accountant General of the Federation. It's automatic.
Okay.
So it's part of what they will be checking, confirming, and ensuring that there is compliance.
All right, ladies and gentlemen and our viewers, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We have a number of programs.
Now, we have a number of tweets, as announced by my colleague Kinsley, and we go straight to them. Steve Bond 007, he says, the balance sheet before and after monetary allocations should be published on all national dailies. The account balance should be available on request to any inquiring citizen. It is public money. They have a right to know how it is spent.
Chris Simeon has this tweet. Transparency is important in management of public finance. This is because it strengthens governance, and management is an essential tool that speeds up affairs in both public and private sectors. To ensure transparency in managing public finance, government officials must give detailed information on how the government uses state resources.
Now, Nwogugu Ikechukwu Sevanus, he said, to achieve transparency in public finance management, all deliveries of budgetary allocations to ministries, departments, and agencies should be published before times for public notice, while they will be required to publish their budgetary expenditure at the end of the financial year.
Dele Jack Solomon, corruption, poor public financial management, institutional challenges, staff absenteeism or lateness to work, leakage and abuse of government information or lack of political will had created public sector decay in Nigeria that have discouraged potential investments?
We told us Sunday, we need self-discipline and reorientation, especially among civil servants who are the major drivers in this regard.
Mike Anyankwo, that Nigeria is still at this level of development was a result of poor public finance management. There must be prudence in our public accounts as well as checks and balances.
Well, Omobola Hobabs, my view on public finance management in Nigeria is that it's generally abysmal. There's hardly any ministry, department, or agency of the federal government you check their account records that will not find one act of financial misdemeanor or the other. It's more of a routine.
Titus Mondenunk tweets, just make everybody in the Accountant General's office sit up and plant spies in the agency, and you will see deliverables. If someone or any Oga is made a culprit, if he or she commits any infractions. Nigerians perform maximally when closely monitored.
Akeju Labaju, public financial management is a wide field of specialization in public administration and covered several areas of concern. Transparency and accountability in public finance management are Siamese twins necessary for good governance. However, very few that take decisions on us have low skill in public finance management.
Festus Akimboyewa, an effective public financial system is essential for any government that is interested in providing quality public service and sustainable economy. Sadly, there's no level of government in Nigeria that has a transparent public financial management system. This must change. I think you should write rather that there was no level of government in Nigeria, because this one is at the federal level and it's meant to alter the state of things.
Comrade Alaji Ngala, justice and accountability will be the only solution.
Bashiru says OTP, that's the Open Treasury Portal, is a laudable initiative. However, it needs to go beyond just reporting figures. For instance, the level of implementation should also be reported to track how funds are utilized.
Now, I just finished. I hope I got that correctly. I'm happy this is coming now. It will give government officials a sense of direction, knowing the public will ask questions on public fund usage. But the ad is not responding now. I didn't get that.
That's the address, I believe.
Okay,
That's the address.
Exactly, yeah.
But where MZ is tweeting, it says the portal, that's opentreasury.gov.ng, is exceptional. It gives authentic figures and transparency where there are no impediments or distortions to financial information of the government.
Now, finally, first, the checks put in place by President Buhari's administration to protect public funds should give the government credibility and improve public trust. It should make it easier for the government to raise the funds it needs from taxpayers and borrowers. Fingers crossed.
All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate. In the meantime, let's return now to our guest, Accountant General of the Federation. The utility of the Open Treasury portal has been discussed, but I'm sure that you are familiar with this general complaint, which has to do with budget implementation, whether at the federal or at state levels. It's doubtful whether any of the tiers of government has ever attained 100% budget implementation, nor 80% and above. And often the complaints are that we haven't received capital releases from the Office of the Accountant General. So releases are often a major fact. So what we are dealing with Open Portal now is what you have released. But at other times, the thing is that they don't get releases. And some complaints are to the effect that the Office of the Accountant General, or perhaps the Ministry of Finance, uses its discretion to the detriment of some MDAs in picking and choosing what to release, whereas some critical projects already identified by the MDAs are thereby left to suffer. What's your response?
Thank you very much. We are now talking of budget implementation and budget performance. And I must give a little background. And the background is that in recent years, past years, we have had a situation where budgets were never passed until some month into the year itself. And that is the beginning of the issue. That is the beginning of the problem. Be that as it may, I must commend the present National Assembly and the good relationship that is subsisting between the legislature and the executive. And we have seen for the first time in recent years that we have reverted to January to December budget year. Because of the exit of what we carried over last year, the release was only 40%. And there was an instruction to roll over 60% to 2020. And to as much as possible, avoid introduction of new projects. Let us complete the ones that have been started. Because one of the issues, again, is starting a project and leaving it halfway when resources were expended on it. Now, I believe with what we have in place, the budget being passed, it is now a law, it is now an appropriation, and we know exactly the capital component of the budget, and we know the deficit that has to be financed through borrowing. And I believe the budget office, the debt management office is up to the task to provide the element that is to be borrowed as far as the 2020 appropriation bill is concerned. We will get to see a budget performance this year that is different from what we've seen in the recent past years. And I believe we should be positive about it. The Office of Accountant General of the Federation is equal to the task. We always do what is necessary to provide funding, to provide releases as approved, as provided. And we will continue to do that. I assure the public that our office will even be more efficient because we are now streamlined. We can see visibility. We know it is from January to December. We can make our focus correctly and so on. And that is what I can give as an assurance.
So what you have said simply means that is actually suggestive of the fact that the delays in releasing funds to MDAs or ministries for developmental, projects is now tied to the delay in budgetary, allocations or approvals and what have you. But what Kingsley was actually asking is a situation where your office uses discretion to determine who to give what, at the point in time.
We never use discretion. We work with a warrant or an AIE, which clearly spells out who is to be paid what. Okay. No discretion, no subjectivity. It is highly objective, straight, and very real. I don't know from where that is coming from. Use of discretion? No, not in our office. There is a document, which is a legal document, signed by Honorable Minister of Finance, a warrant. And once that is issued, nobody, not even the ministry, because it will clearly state this is to be given, and the details are here, the components and breakdown are for this. Even when we release to the ministry, they cannot change A for B or B for C. So I don't know from where that is coming. And I don't want to accuse anybody when I don't have evidence before me.
Okay.
Yeah. But if there are specific accusations, specific complaints, I think they should be made known.
Okay, what a part of our responsibility is to
you are the watchdog.
Listen, or have watchdog.
You are the watchdog. You are the voice of the public.
Exactly.
And this is what you've heard. But it's one thing to make an allegation, and it's another to come and prove it.
Exactly.
We have to be specific. No discretion is used.
Okay.
I've told you we release 40%. And that is it.
Yeah.
And one can verify by going to the ministries.
Yeah, it's possible. It's likely, probably, again, for purposes of speculation, which is not necessary at this stage, that the discretion is exercised in the office of the Minister of Finance. The officials there will say, okay, this is what you pay, and then when the warrant comes, you are bound by it. But let's come back to Professor Kenife. Can we probably discuss the likely risks in this open treasury portal? It's what out there, information superhighway. What are the likely abuses?
Abuses?
Yes.
Well, if you are using technology, you should always be aware that you are open to cyber attack. And some of the cyber attack may be to infiltrate the system and post different figures. And so we have to be aware of that. So that has to come into the risk management of the Accountant General's office, how they intend to deal with cyber defense mechanisms. But also, I mean, people who are going to input this data are human beings. So you can't rule out the possibility of a sabotage one day from somebody for whatever reason to input a figure just to cause an embarrassment, and then later we'll pick up the pieces. So there are, and then of course the system itself, you don't know whether there's a bug somewhere in the system or in the network that will be triggered at some point, and then you have a fallout. So there are some risks, technological risks.
And again, we would like to find out from AG, whether there is any measure being put in place, because you are expecting to have attacks, cyber attacks, and what have you. Is there any measure being put in place technologically, to ensure that that will not happen?
We are always not unaware of the fact that there are possibilities of attack, hackers, cyber pirates, and so on. And so we fortify our systems continuously. It's not just wait till you are attacked. No, we devise means for continuous. Okay. And talking about risk, one element of risk, which possibly I thought you were talking about when you talk of risk in using the portal, is information or data to do with national security. Mm-hmm. We are not unmindful of the need to protect national security. There are data that we know can impact on national security, and we try to be silent about it. This is a fact. No country in the world will just give its own security, national information, strategic information that border on national security to the world.
That's right.
We must be protected.
In other words, there are boundaries.
There are boundaries. Okay. I must tell you that there are boundaries.
Let's come to Christian.
Yes.
I want to ask you one particular question, or rather ask you to, as well, what could serve as your final thoughts on this matter, to talk to those who are going to be key players, in this new initiative, as an entrepreneur and business etiquette expert, right? So you speak to the individuals, because one, like you said, some people will upload data. These are individuals. We have auditors, we have accountants, and of course procurement. What should be their ethical practice, to ensure that this works out?
Well, naturally, I would say that everyone should try to work for the full compliance with this initiative. Every stakeholder is critical to the success of it. And so the Accountant General has given his own commitment and his team's commitment to making sure that this works. We've commended the President as head of the government for having brought it out at all. But we on the side, the users of such information, for profit, for national benefit, for community benefit, we also have a duty to make sure that we use the information we access for the right use. We take it for the right use. We also must be mindful of, like Prof mentioned, and I was going to say that as one of the challenges, cybercrime. Incidentally, is an area that I'm interested in because I had done some work, facilitated some work on cybercrime, and it's gaining very serious dimensions. Cybercrime has come to a level that someone will sit in a hut in a village and can really jeopardize all we're talking about, because there are small boxes that can intercept information and all that. So we have to be mindful about that too. Every hand should be on deck. The Minister of Communications, the Minister of Digital Economy now, all those should be critical stakeholders in this area. They should let Nigerians know what to do in the instance of a cyber attack, what we should do to prevent a cyber attack, because it could be from the implement I'm using from my own device that such information may be compromised. And so there are so many angles to it, but I just want to say that there should be proper education and enlightenment of every stakeholder in this matter, especially even our officers who also have to do with the external stakeholders. Okay.
I think for close monitoring of the policy and the portal in particular, there is an interministerial committee made up of inclusive of investigative agencies, EFCC, ICPC, the Ministry of Finance, our office, and a host of others that have the responsibility to ensure, full working of the system, and all these agencies with their representatives can also, have one thing to do with the information and the data that is therein. And again, the data that is being uploaded or downloaded onto the portal are those on either Excel form or PDF. PDF is a file that you see data, you can use it, you can check it, but you cannot alter it. It cannot be altered. And so we are not unmindful of the fact that some people can go in and begin to change certain things. No, nobody can go in and change figures. The figures remain as they are. They are highly protected.
Accountant General of the Federation, we've raised a number of issues as to how the subnational entities, can key into this, and Professor Kenny Efe has also said there are ways that the federal government can twist, the subnationals to get into this. But suppose the subnationals ask for a quid pro quo, namely, this has been on the table for a long time, separate the office of the Accountant General of the Federation from the office of the Accountant General of the federal government.
You want my reaction to that?
Absolutely.
Good. You see, there were years in the first administrations where clearly there is this perception, I don't know whether it is real, that the Office of Accountant General of the Federation does not play the expected role. It is more inclined to the federal government. And some examples were cited. These were the times when some funding of states were given to few states and others were denied. And this happened through the Office of Accountant General of the Federation. Then, those were the accusations. With the present administration, that is open, that is transparent, that is apt in looking at all subnationals as equal members of the Nigerian Federation. We have not seen a single instance where a state benefits from one thing and others do not benefit.
Okay.
When it comes to budget support, all states benefited. When it came to payment of Paris Club, there were, all states benefited. Ruling party states and non-ruling party states. Let me be a bit open.
We're going to pause it here.
So all these agitations were because of some perception before, which now do not exist.
We're going to stop you here because of time.
Okay, excellent. I wish you will call me.
But what I'm interested in actually is if, like Chrisley said, look, if you can adopt a quid pro quo in this to say, look, even if it's Paris Club or whatever it is, if you don't do this, we don't give you this, even in monthly allocation. If it's a possibility to do, to ensure that, subnationals will comply to.
You cannot withhold monthly allocation.
Legally, the states,
you cannot.
Legally, the states cannot be denied their money.
All right.
Under whatever guise.
All right. That's just by the way, because because, you know,
But accountants usually don't talk a lot. When they want to sign, their signature is also very economical. I don't know.
Green pen.
My own is huge.
Yeah, all right, we have another set of tweets, by the way. There are viewers who've been listening on this conversation. Abubakar Bala has this tweet. The federal government, in collaboration with the National Assembly, should work out modalities to drag adamant states into this system. States should not be allowed on their own to decide. Transparency is key if we want to change the narratives.
Obiagwe Fine, this is incredibly amazing. I just opened the site and it is real. They're even asking me, hello, would you like to talk to any of our agents? That's applause for yes.
When I said it, maybe there were some doubts.
No, he just went in.
Would you like to talk to any of our agents?
Yeah.
Yes, you should speak to one, and then let's take it further from that. Farida Sharif tweets. Now, this is a good one, and should have a space for states and local governments so that we can reduce the cost of governance.
Okay, Egwabo Joseph says, I visited the portal a while ago, and it's more like the more you look, the less you see. I think we should find a way to add the auditor and the Accountant General's reports to each posting on the portal, whatever else to increase capacity for specificity and real openness.
Now, Clement Adeoye tweets, agencies of government, department and ministries need to imbibe this culture of financial transparency to better the life of Nigerians.
Lukman Mohammed, I believe it's only transparency that can take Nigeria to the promised land. Hence, the government needs to be more sincere to its citizens.
All right, Kieran, I think that those are the tweets that we can take this time. And on that note, we'd like to thank all our three guests who've been with us this morning. Christy Adejo, business etiquette trainer and public affairs analyst. Thanks a lot for being with us. Good morning, Nigeria. Professor Ken Ife, economic analyst. Thanks a lot for being around. And the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris. Thanks a lot for being here with us.
I'm glad. I wish I can be invited again.
No, we'll invite you. No,
there are a lot of questions not asked.
Exactly. We'll bring you back.
And answers not given.
No, we'll bring you back. We'll bring you back.
Okay, no problem. We'll bring you back. And then you've been on Good Morning Nigeria in the past. So we appreciate your being around. Let's see how the policy works for a while.
Okay.
And then we'll have the opportunity
to make assessment.
Make an assessment. And we'll have the opportunity of asking more questions. So we'll thank you this morning for tuning in to Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kieran Umar. It's been a great time with you this morning. Do that again tomorrow when we return.